The biggest AI story of the year did not come from OpenAI, did not come from Google, and did not come from a press release. It came from the Vatican. At noon Rome time on a Monday, a pope released an encyclical on artificial intelligence, and standing next to him at St. Peter's Square was a co-founder of Anthropic. 4 other moves dropped in the same 24 hours. None of them blinked first. Start with the number that broke the leaderboard. Anthropic is closing a $30 billion funding round at a valuation north of $900 billion. That puts it, for the first time, above OpenAI's $852 billion mark from March. The company also projected $10.9 billion in second quarter revenue, and its first quarterly operating profit in its history. 2 years ago, this was the Safety Lab. Now it's the most valuable private AI company on Earth. 12 hours later, OpenAI made its countermove. The company prepped its confidential S-1 filing with the SEC, the formal paperwork for an IPO. After years of saying it wouldn't go public, after years of structural complexity, the trigger finally got pulled. And the reason matters. When your nearest rival just leapfrogged your valuation, the cheapest capital on Earth is sitting in public markets. OpenAI just decided to grab it before the IPO window closes. Then the SpaceX bombshell dropped. Buried inside SpaceX's own S-1 filings was a single line. Anthropic is paying $1.25 billion per month, through May 2029, for raw compute. $45 billion total. Per month, Anthropic now spends more on those data centers than most countries spend on national defense. And the strangest part, the Safety Lab founded by people who walked out of OpenAI is now that infrastructure's largest single compute customer. But here's where it gets really interesting. At noon Rome time, the unthinkable happened. Pope Leo XIV walked into St. Peter's Square and released his first encyclical. The title, Magnifica Humanitas, Magnificent Humanity. The subject, Artificial Intelligence. And standing beside him at the lectern was not a bishop, not a cardinal. It was Christopher Olah, co-founder of Anthropic, one of the most respected interpretability researchers alive. A pope and an AI lab founder. One stage, Leo XIV, the first American pope, the first Augustinian on the throne, deliberately took the name Leo. That choice wasn't decorative. The last Leo to share that number, Leo XIII, wrote the document that defined Catholic teaching on labor and capitalism during the First Industrial Revolution. Today's Leo just did the same thing for AI. He picked his papal name knowing exactly what message it would send to Silicon Valley. The encyclical itself does not read like a blessing. It reads like a constitution. It calls for binding international protocols on autonomous systems. It demands that any AI capable of replacing human judgment in legal, medical, or military decisions face mandatory third-party audit. It explicitly names the category of labs racing toward agents capable of independent action. The Vatican just drew the first moral line in the AI arms race, and named it from the pulpit. And that's not even the strangest part. Inside the same 24 hours, the White House made its own move. President Trump abruptly canceled the signing of his AI executive order. The order labs had been bracing for weeks. The reason, in his own words, it risked undermining America's competitive edge. Translation. The labs got to him first. OpenAI, Anthropic XAI, and Google all lobbied to keep federal review voluntary. They won. The pen stayed capped. Then came the merger no one was expecting. NextEra Energy announced a $67 billion acquisition of Dominion Energy, the largest utility deal in American history. The stated reason on the conference call, AI-powered demand. Not population growth. Not climate retrofits. Artificial intelligence. Wall Street's quietest takeaway from this entire weekend was simple. The next ceiling on AI is not chips, and it is not data. It is the grid. And the grid just started consolidating. Inside the labs, the personnel chessboard moved too. Andrej Karpathy, the man who helped build OpenAI's original deep learning team, and Tesla's original autopilot stack, officially joined Anthropic this week. His mandate, rebuild the pre-training research team from scratch. The most coveted researcher in AI, the engineer founders quote in their own pitch decks, now reports to the company that just outflanked his former employer in valuation. Talent follows momentum. Momentum, right now, has a name. Wait until you see what happened next. OpenAI's product team did not sit quietly either. In the same window, the company shipped a codex update that lets the agent take full control of a locked Mac device. Open apps, file documents, send emails, execute on a goal across a closed environment. It is the first time a commercial AI agent has cleared the local OS sandbox at consumer scale. And it dropped on a Monday with almost no fanfare. They wanted the headline buried. Google had already fired its first round 6 days earlier. Gemini 3.5 Flash, priced at roughly one-third the cost of frontier rivals, plus Gemini Spark, a personal agent that reasons across all of a user's connected apps. The I/O announcements would have been the biggest news of any other week. This week, they were a footnote. That is the speed we are operating at now. A flagship launch from Google fades from the cycle in 5 days. Adobe, Canva, and CapCut each announced native Gemini integrations across photo and video tools. 3 of the 4 biggest creative software platforms on the planet, all now routing their AI requests through a single lab. A year ago, every creative app rolled its own model. Today, the infrastructure layer has collapsed into 3 names: OpenAI, Anthropic, Google. Everyone else is a wrapper. That consolidation, more than any single product, is the real story of this entire week. Here's where it gets really interesting. Look at the compute side of the board. Anthropic is locked into one supercomputing cluster. OpenAI is locked into Stargate and Microsoft. Google runs on its own TPUs. xAI runs on Memphis. For separate megaclusters, for separate energy footprints, for separate sovereign scale capital lines. The infrastructure is no longer fungible. If one cluster fails, an entire frontier model fails with it. We just built 4 parallel internets that don't talk. On the capability side, the lines also cross today. Anthropic's internal Claude Mythos became the first model on record to clear the UK AI Security Institute's 32-step cybersecurity range. 3 out of 10 runs, with a 73% success rate on expert-level tasks. That sounds dry. It isn't. A model that can chain 32 cybersecurity steps autonomously is, by every classical definition, an offensive cyber agent. The UK government published the result anyway. They wanted everyone to see. Stack all of it together. A valuation crown change. An IPO filing. A $45 billion compute contract. A papal encyclical. A cancelled executive order. A $67 billion utility merger. The most famous researcher in AI changing teams. A model clearing offensive cyber benchmarks. All of it inside one 24-hour window. There is no precedent for this density of motion in any technology sector. The closest analog is a stock market opening bell rung in 5 cities at once. The obvious question: why now? The labs deny coordination, and there is no evidence they coordinated. What there is a shared deadline pressure. Every lab is racing the same fiscal year, the same compute buildouts, the same regulatory window. When one lab announces a number, the others have hours to respond before the news cycle bakes a narrative. Today, none of them blinked. They all moved. Silence was the only thing that would have been louder. Step back, and the geometry is clear. The AI industry is no longer 5 labs and 1,000 startups. It is 3 labs for megaclusters, 2 capital sources, and 1 global moral authority that just inserted itself into the conversation. The map has fewer pieces, and the pieces are heavier. That makes every move more consequential. The next 12 months will not see more announcements per week. They will see fewer, bigger, and more permanent ones. For anyone using these tools, the practical fallout is already arriving. Pricing on frontier models is collapsing. Gemini Flash is 1/3 the price it was a year ago. Agent capabilities are jumping in months, not years. And the regulatory ceiling that everyone assumed would land in 2026 just got pushed out again. Courtesy of one cancelled signature. The window for free fire AI deployment is still open. That window is the entire opportunity for the next year. For builders, the message is harder. The wrapper layer is dying. If your product is 3 prompts and a logo, you are being absorbed by the model providers within a quarter. If you own a workflow, a dataset, a distribution channel, or a regulated industry pocket, you survive. The labs cannot do everything. They can do almost everything. The remaining sliver is where every founder needs to live for the next 18 months. And here's the date I promised you. Magnifica Humanitas was not signed on a random day. It was signed exactly 135 years to the day after Pope Leo XIII signed Rerum Novarum, the document that defined the Catholic Church's stance on the First Industrial Revolution. The Vatican picked today on purpose. And once that date was on the calendar, every lab knew it had to be on the wire before the bell rang. Now answer this honestly. Which of these moves will actually still matter 12 months from now? Drop your pick below. I'll be reading every one. That's all for today. If you found this useful, like, subscribe, and share it with someone who'd care. Catch you next time.